Dr. G.
Hey!
Why are you dressed in your winter coat, a hat, and a scarf?
Why aren't you dressed in a hat, a coat, and a scarf, and gloves? Because, baby, it's cold outside.
It is cold outside. And it's Wonderful World Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
Also.
You know what? It's Wonderful Weather Wednesday.
Oh, I like that. I came across something in this really cool book from the library, Loveland Public Library, Ultimate Survival Guide for Kids. Just in case you find yourself in an extreme weather situation,
Yep.
Having read this book, you'll be prepared. Like, for instance, if I was stuck outside in cold weather, like a blizzard or a white hurricane, stay tuned, you'll find out what that is, where the mounds of snow are keeping me from getting to my warm house, I can always dig out a cave in the snow. But here it says I want to make sure that the entrance into my little snow fort is lower than where I'll be sitting, because cold air sinks. So the warm air will be up here around my head and my torso, and I'll be warmer than if I'm down here by the entrance. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
There's other information in here about extreme rain conditions, like I said, snow, what to do to survive, a dangerous attack by an animal, all sorts of things in this ultimate
like a
survival
corgi?
guide. Yeah, an attack from a fierce corgi Monroe. But this leads us in to the White Hurricane of 1913.
Yeah, and you might think that the White Hurricane was like my boxing nickname, but it wasn't. The White Hurricane was an extreme weather event that happened in 1913, over 100 years ago. And it was a blizzard that had winds up to 100 miles an hour, so they were hurricane force winds. And it happened at the beginning of November. And this was back before we really had significantly accurate weather forecasts. And people did not trust weather forecasts back in 1913. And in fact, they thought that they could predict the weather more accurately. Yeah. How do you think people would have tried to predict the weather like 100 years ago? You know, not using computer models and that kind of thing. Like
the Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah, Farmer's Almanac was one way that people predicted the weather.
They would have studied the sky.
Yep.
They would have watched wildlife.
Yeah, all of those things. They would have seen if their cat had jumped on a table and what that might predict. Some people think that, like, when their joints, like their knee or their elbow starts to hurt, then there's going to be a storm. But there were sailors on the Great Lakes, so those are the big lakes that are between the United States and Canada.
There are 5 of them.
Yes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. And they thought that they could predict the weather really well. And they believed that a storm was not coming. They thought the weather was going to be good, even though kind of an early form of the National Weather Service said a storm is coming. But these sailors then are getting in their ships, and they're going out into the water. Well, little did they know that the White Hurricane was about to strike, and it was November 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. It was a 5-day storm. It was massive. Unfortunately, about 250 sailors lost their lives. They were drowned. 12 ships were sunk. Twice as many of those were wrecked in some form or another. And if you were on the Great Lakes in one of these boats or these ships when the storm came, it was really terrible because it was cold. And it's not just the fact that it's really windy, but these lakes are really deep, and so the waves became really high, and some of the boats got flipped over. But one sailor wrote this about his experience out on the Great Lake. I think it's on Huron. Snow and sleet blinded us. The docks and engine room were solid ice. The ship was an iceberg. The ship tossed and lurched and creaked and trembled. Men were thrown around like toys. So it was really, really terrible conditions. And there was one boat that it was near the edge of it was near the shoreline, and it got pushed up against the shoreline. And as it was going towards there, the crew and the passengers all went to one end of the ship. It hit a big rock and it just snapped in half. And so now they're all in one half of the boat that's kind of left over, and the wind and the snow is coming in because, of course, it's been torn up. And they all thought that they were going to die, that they were going to freeze to death. So they used kind of a trick. I'm sure it's not in your book, but it's something similar to that. One sailor came up with the idea of taking a bathtub and kind of flipping it upside down.
Not a porcelain bathtub. Would it have been a porcelain bathtub?
Yeah, it would have been a porcelain bathtub.
Okay.
And they turned it into a fireplace.
That
You know,
makes
because
sense.
it wouldn't burn.
Yeah.
And
that makes
then
sense.
since there are lots of wood that had been broken up from the ship, they used that as fuel. And so they're able to kind of move around in shifts to get close to the fire and not freeze to death. But one guy volunteered to go out, and he got on shore and he hiked several miles, and he found a nearby town, and he told him what happened. And then a bunch of people came to the shoreline, and they were trying to get to the boat. And so they took this smaller boat out to try to rescue some of the people. But again, it was blowing and there was so much snow that they had to come back. And when they got back, the men were literally frozen into the boat. And
from the water.
Yeah, from all the water coming and
yeah.
just freezing them in place. And they had to take pickaxes and chip them out of the boat. But eventually a bigger boat went out. It was faster and was able to rescue the crew.
Tell them about the men on the boat, though, that were frozen in the water.
Well, those are the ones. They're frozen into the boat.
But they survived.
They all survived, yeah.
Yeah.
But this storm caused $5 million worth of damage. That's $1913. It's several $billion now. In Cleveland, there were 22 inches of snow. That's 2 feet of snow. And around Lake Huron, the snowdrifts were 4 feet high, which are probably taller than some of the kids who will watch this program.
Yeah.
Sidewalks were torn up. People, after the first day, there was kind of a little bit of a lull. They ran to the grocery store and bought up all the food.
Toilet paper?
Yeah, exactly. And milk like we do today.
Yeah.
Telegraph lines and telephone lines were snapped in half, and it just caused mayhem. But the biggest thing is that at the end of this, the government realized that it needed to have a better system for forecasting, and so it improved forecasting and it improved alerts to let people know that severe weather was coming.
Like our national weather system,
right.
that sort of thing.
So it wasn't all for naught. Some good came from it.
Yeah. Well, to go along with the very creative way of creating a makeshift fire on board the boat, we have a series of books that are super simple DIY survival books that teach you how to make things that will help you during extreme weather or situations where you catch yourself unprepared. This particular one, I don't know if you can zoom in, it's using from your picnic basket all your Ziploc bags, and you're stuffing in there napkins, mittens, gloves, extra shirts that you may have, pants, whatever, socks, into this. Here, let me take my sticky note off. Into this and creating your own little vest. So this is a series that we have at the library for you to check out. And again, it's super simple DIY survival. The people on the boat could have used that very easily. And then for all our fiction lovers out there, we have the I Survive series by Tarshis, Lauren Tarshis. And this particular book in the series, this is historical fiction, which is a made-up story based loosely on an historical event.
Yeah.
And this one is about the children's blizzard of 1888 So that was like 30 years before the 1913 white hurricane
So
that
it
we
snowed
talked
children?
about.
Is that why it's a children's blizzard?
I don't know, but you'll have to find out.
Okay.
I don't think it snowed children. I wonder if their snowdrifts were higher than the white hurricane of 1913. But this is at the library, this whole series by Lauren Tarshis. So come to the Loveland Public Library for all your survivor skills. Well, to learn survival skills, to be prepared for the next disaster, and to read some historical fiction. See you next time.